Welcome to BIV Today, the daily podcast from the newsroom of business in Vancouver. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief. You know, we've heard repeatedly at this stage of the pandemic that businesses are facing a profound labor shortage. A new survey from the Business Development Bank of Canada suggests these problems aren't going away and that businesses are going to have to develop some new strategies or else they're going to face limits on their growth and capacity. My guest today is Pierre Cléroux. He's the chief economist for BDC. We're going to talk about the report and on how to adapt to the labor shortage. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Well, how serious are these problems?
Well, they are serious because they are limiting the growth of many companies across the country, and as a result, they are limiting the growth of the economy. And unfortunately, this is not a short-term problem. It's because we have an aging population, so we're going to have a shortage of labor for many years.
Yeah. Were these problems brought on by the pandemic, or did they precede the pandemic?
No, they were there before the pandemic. I don't know if you remember, just before the pandemic, the unemployment rate was very low. It was very difficult to find people in British Columbia and a different part of the country. The pandemic made things worse in two ways. First, it limited immigration for 2020 and 2021. Immigration declined by half in Canada. We're missing about 400,000 immigrants, so that really makes the situation worse. And also, during the pandemic, a lot of people lost their job, and they actually took the opportunity to move to another sector. So for some sectors, like accommodation and food services, the situation is really difficult because of that.
I think the survey, if I'm correct on this one, found that literally 1 in 5 people, you know, were either making a move or contemplating a move. How different is that than what you would get in a typical year and a half, for instance, in our economy?
Oh, this is very different. We never saw that before. So many people moving from one sector to another. And there's two reasons for that. The fact that a lot of people lost their job, they were forced to look for other opportunities. And that's the reason why we see so many people are looking for a new job, because they lost their job. So they were forced to look for something else. And that's the reason, one of the reasons why we had so many people switching from one sector to another.
Now, I'm sure you've heard this too, that the pandemic in some cases also prompted a real reconsideration of the relationship to work. So is it that people just have a kind of a restlessness about what jobs they want to have and are being maybe a little fussier on what they want to choose?
Well, I think it's because they have the opportunity to change. For example, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of truck drivers decided that they wanted to do something else. It's very demanding to be a truck driver. You're away from your family for many days. But maybe they didn't have the opportunity to do that before because that, you know, their profession was truck driver. But now there's so many opportunities in so many sectors. So if you can find a job in manufacturing or maybe with a better salary, and you wouldn't work as much outside your city, outside of your family. So I think the fact that there's so many people missing give a lot of opportunities for people.
Yeah, I mean, during the really heavy throes of the pandemic, obviously we provided a lot of support as a country to those that were out of work and to companies that needed some assistance in terms of wage subsidies and so on. But I wonder if now what we're reaching is this wake-up phase in the economy, where also we're beginning to appreciate the fact that we had some issues in terms of compensation, in terms of types of work that we had, in terms of the overall packages that were provided to those who had those skills.
Well, that's a good point. I think the fact that there's going to be, not as many as enough people for the job that are available. So obviously, people are going to their demand is going to be different. Also, the pandemic changed a lot of things. People would want to work more from home now. This is a new phenomenon. There was not the case before the pandemic. They want to have more flexible hours. So the pandemic also changed the way we're working. And the fact that there's a shortage of labor, well, it definitely gave the opportunity for people to ask for more compensation.
Yeah. Is there an actual skills shortage, Pierre, or is it that the skills aren't necessarily being compensated the way that the workers would like their skills to be compensated?
I think it's both. I think there's definitely a lack of people, a lack of budget, but also some people would like to get more compensation for the work they do, and in this market, I think they will get it.
Yeah. Can Canada catch up to what was lost here in the way of reduced immigration numbers?
Well, we can. The federal government already announced before the pandemic that they wanted to double the number of immigrants. Unfortunately, with the restriction during the pandemic, the opposite happened. The number declined by half. But after this pandemic is over, we're going to see more and more immigration. This is not the only solution. This is not going to solve the problem by itself, but this is going to help. We definitely.
Is it also going to accelerate, you think, digital automation, those kinds of things that actually take the place of manual labor? Yeah.
Definitely. I think we are going to see, already we are seeing businesses investing more in technology to replace some tasks with technology. It's more and more possible to do that now. You can do it in manufacturing. You can do it in retail stores by having a cash register with automation. I was speaking today and one of our clients to manufacture equipment for restaurants. He was saying that the demand is huge because it's so difficult to recruit for restaurants that they are buying more equipment, trying to reduce their need for workers. So I think in the next few years, we're going to see a lot of momentum for investing in technology.
Yeah, and yet there still is going to be a rather aged workforce. And I wonder what new strategies you think businesses are going to have to adopt in order to adapt to that.
Well, one thing is it would be time to hire more people who are older. Canadians are working longer now because we live longer. We live in a better shape. So people want to live longer, even if they're retired. Sometimes they want to do something else. So that's a pool of workers that is available. Also, the unemployment rate for young people is also higher. So we all like to hire people with 10 years of experience. But in this current context, I think it's also possible to hire younger people and train them inside our companies. And this other group of people who have difficulties to find a job, for example, immigrants who have been in Canada for less than 5 years, their unemployment rate is much higher than other Canadians. So in terms of, we'll have to be creative. We'll have to look differently at the job market.
And when you think about what the role here for government is, how, again, might that shift in the time ahead?
I think immigration is one of the one of the things that government is really responsible for. So there's a lot of work to do to accelerate the process. It takes a lot of time. With clients at lunchtime, and it takes 9 to 12 months before, when you go outside the country and identify the candidate, it takes a very long time before you're able to have them in Canada. So that's one thing that government can improve. Also, the labor force is changing. We're going to need people who are much more able to use technology, because technology is becoming much more predominant in our businesses. So I think there's another role for governments to help people to retrain, to adapt to this new reality. The younger generation, they don't need that. They are very comfortable with technology. But people who have been in the labor force for 20 or 30 years, well, government can really help them to upgrade their skills.
You would be familiar in Quebec, of course, with a pretty profound childcare strategy that the province has had for decades now. How important do you think it is in terms of addressing some of this issue that this federal government work with the provinces very swiftly in order to try to implement its ambitious plan for national childcare?
I think it's going to help. It's going to help because if you can send your kids to a professional childcare at a reasonable cost, you will have more people to be able to participate to the job market. So in that sense, I think it will help the situation.
Yeah. When you take a look at what kind of cut or harm or impact this has had on the overall competitiveness of the Canadian economy vis-a-vis other countries, how serious do you think it has been?
Well, I think it's so far, I don't think the impact was very major, but we are seeing the impact now. We are in the recovery mode. The economy is growing, but actually the shortage of labor is limiting the growth. We meet every day companies who are refusing clients, refusing contracts. We see restaurants that are not open 7 days a week anymore. So this is limiting the growth right now. If we don't find solutions, it's going to continue to limit the growth of the Canadian economy.
Is there anyone that's doing really well as a result of this labor shortage?
Well, definitely people who are working to, headhunters and companies who are paid to find candidates for companies, they are doing well. But beside that, I think it's difficult for everybody. It's difficult for every sector. It's more difficult for some sectors like accommodation, food services, but it's even like, for example, a growing area is the tech sector, and they have a tough time to hire people because there's a shortage of talent in that sector. So it's difficult for every business.
Let me conclude though by asking you, like, how worried are you as an economist about where this is going to have, how this is going to have a real knock-on effect on the Canadian economy if we don't find some new measures in order to address it?
Well, I'm not worried that this is going to be responsible for a recession. We will continue to grow, but my worry is that if we don't find the right solution, it's going to limit our growth. Long-term growth of an economy is based on your labor supply and your productivity. In Canada, we have been, we have been very lucky over the last 30 years. We had a large pool of workers coming to the job market. Now our growth was assured by that. But in the future, it will be important to improve our productivity. It would be important to find solutions because if we're not, we're going to limit.
Yeah. Pierre, it's always good talking to you. You're obviously talking a lot today to talk about your study, so I understand the cough and the fatigue. But thanks so much for your time again, for shedding light on this and really important study.
Thank you. Thanks to you.
Pierre Cléroux is the chief economist for BDC. I'm Kirk LaPointe, publisher and editor-in-chief at Business in Vancouver. Thanks a lot for watching.